Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Michael Eugene Adams, Leslie Morgan Alley, Jerry Edwin Barker, Richard Stanley Bates, Ernest John Baines, Jerry Eugene Bevan, Ronald Burke Bishop, Neil George Bollinger, Nicholson Brown, Nicholas Edward Brusnak, Samuel Edward Bryant, Kenneth Richard Buell, Dennis Lamar Bunting, Robert Allen Burke, Kenneth George Burlock Jr., Leonard Burrow, Gary William Butler, Miguel Antonio Bino, Eduardo Camarino Salazar, James Otis Carr, Benny Gillis Carr, Richard Allen Chambers, James Wayne Chambers, Raymond Earl Chambers, John Lane Chesbro, Melvin Ronald Childers, Merrill J. Claiborne, James Russell Coates, Irvin Lee Condrey, David Leland Connor, Bernard James Cook, Dwayne Corbett, Eddie Nelson Corsino, Dale J. Crittenberger, Robert George Cummings, Jr., John Rudolph Cummins, Jr., James Joseph Daly, Thomas James Daniels, Gary James Davis, Nevitt Dial Davis, Edgar Felton Davis, Stephen James Dawson, Robert Normand Deshane, Columbo Phil Del Turzo, Dennis Allen Denton, Donald William Dietz, Vern George Donnelly, Frank Frederick Douglass, Merle L. Duman, Kevin Howard Dugan, David Edward Dumond, Dennis Keith Eaker, Larry Dean Ellers, David Lawrence Eisenbraun, Walter Eugene Ellis, Willie Ellison Jr., Irvin Jr. Emerson, Randall Lee Farlow, Bruce Jerome Fedler, Dennis Wayne Ferguson, Mark Andrew Ferguson, William Andrew Fitch, George Richard Fitzgerald, William Gordon Fleming, Jr.,
Ezekiel Fraley, Jr., John Wesley George, Marvin E. Gobel, Thomas August Gotesh, Marvin Edward Gordon, Peter Arthur Grubb, Ronald James Hagan, Kevin Carroll Hanley, Willie Charles Hardy, William Michael Harper, Gary Lee Hott, Tristan Whitney Hayes, Ray Allen Hayes, Mark Thomas Hebron, Gary Hill, Rex Michael Hoover, Walter Wesley Hutton, Ronald Lester Huxtable, Glenn Edward Insprunger, Michael William Essenman, Sherman Lee Ivey, G.B. Jackson, Jr., Gary Francis Johnson, Stokely James Jones, William Clyde Joy, Donald Lee Kennedy, James Anthony Kiger, Harold James Kissinger, Leon Edward Kizzy, Dean Albert Clinda, Paul Joseph LaFernay Jr., Billy Dwayne Landers, Thomas Desmond Landman, Harold Paul Leapart, John Robert Lee, George Lee Jr., Darrell Dean Leeton, James Alton Lockwood, Joseph Bingham Mack Jr., David Randall Mackey, Charles Edward McMichael, Lionel Maldonado Torres, Jerry Lee Markham, James Edward Marlowe, Robert P. Mayer, Raymond John Maziak Jr., Edward Dean McCann, Gary Eugene McCaslin,
Ronald McCracken, James Early McGarity Jr., James Brian McCary, Michael Brian McGinnis, Frank Joseph McManus, William Terrell McNair, Alfred McPherson,
Ricky Lee Meeks,
Stephen John Melnick, Dana Wesson Mitchell, Wayne Eugene Monesmith, Gregory Stan Mundell, Michael Clay Nations, William Lee Nellens, Frederick Ellis Nye, Alan Joseph O'Brien,
Charles Edward Owens, William Thomas Parker, Clyde Everett Paul, Jr., Richard Ellsworth Pearson, George B. Pearson III, John Charles Peel, Guadalupe Perez, Wilfred M. Perez, Ronald Joseph Pointer, Dominic Palastro, Michael Wayne Poussin, William Terry Pratt, Paul Michael Presser, Edward Ramos, Thomas Ronnie Range, Jr., James Patrick Rawlins, Michael Charles Reed, Stephen John Reichert, Larry Eugene Richardson, William Albert Ridnour, Noel Wayne Roberts, Robert Edward Rocky, Encarnacion Rodriguez, Ronald Lee Rondo, Albert Eugene Rose, Juan Oscar Sanchez, George Sandoval, Joseph Anthony Cervantes, George David Shannon, Claiborne Lavelle Shaw, William Fry Siegert, Leo Peter Sikorsky, Albert Wilson Sermons, Jr., Theodore Van Skiles, Frank Albert Skokich, Atlas Jasper Maureen Smay, Scott Philip Smith, Larry Dean Smith, Warren Allen Smith, Lloyd Henry Smith, Richard Atwood Snowden, Darnell Joseph Songney, Richard William Starkey, Charles Eugene Stokes, Billy Granville Strickland, James Larry Strong, Conrad Anthony Steibel, Michael Edward Sirwalt, John Richard Tamburi, Jr., Eric Linwood Tidwell, Richard Matthias Turner, Michael Stephen Turose, Jean Leander Tweehouse, William Herman Wademan, Jr., John Wesley Walker, Arthur Watson, Jr., Michael Dale Weeks, Roger Ory Wells, George A. West, Harvey Lee Williams, Omar David Whitmer, Jr., Ronald G. Yaks, George Allen Yarbrough, Thomas Everett Young, Philip Edward Zaleski, Thomas O'Neill Zorn, Jr., Ronald Walter Zidell,